In this video, I'm going to explain how every piece of equipment works, how to use them effectively, and also show you special tricks to get the most out of each item. Whether it's an item you can test for a specific ghost with, or just something to keep track of the ghost location, I will tell you everything you need to know about all the different pieces of equipment. And just quickly before I get into anything, if you find this video helpful, please consider leaving a like or even subscribing. So the first piece of equipment we're going to go over is dots, and the dots interaction is pretty easy to miss, but it will have a ghost shape walking through it briefly. And something to note is that the dots is a separate interaction from where the ghost actually is. The dots isn't going to show anytime the ghost is walking through it, but actually when the ghost is nearby and it triggers a separate dots interaction. And dots can be a bit tricky, especially with the tier 1, it's just horrible. So you'll want to set it up to maximize the area it covers. I like to set up the dots on elevated surfaces, or it can even be okay to set up on the floor if it's in an open area. Something unique for dots is that it's a forced evidence for the Goryo, so let's say you're on a 2 or 1 evidence game mode, then you will always get dots if the ghost is a Goryo. Then dots for a Goryo can also only be seen when both no one is in the ghost room and they can only be seen on a video camera. So for the Goryo dots, you can either watch from the truck or sit outside the ghost room with a video camera and just watch for it. The dots interaction can count as a ghost photo if you're quick enough and capture it in a photo. Dots can also somewhat act as an unconventional light source. And the tier 1 dots are really just that bad, so try to suffer through until you unlock the higher tiers, since those are much easier and better. Next, we have the EMF, and the EMF will start going off if you're near a ghost interaction. It comes from things like door touches, objects being thrown, lights being switched, etc. Anything the ghost interacts with will give an EMF reading. And the evidence you're looking for is EMF 5, and if EMF 5 is in evidence, there's a 25% chance that each EMF occurrence you will get EMF 5. And the EMF will always be on EMF 1. EMF 1 is basically just EMF 0, but EMF 0 isn't a thing. And the tier 1 EMF can be kind of funny sometimes. It might seem like the needle is indicating an EMF reading, but if you don't hear an auditory noise coming from the EMF, then you know it's not an interaction. Next, we have the ghostwriting book, and this is pretty straightforward. Just plop it down in the middle of the ghost room, and there's an animation. The book will be floating in the air while the ghost writes in it. The ghost can throw the writing book if it does not have writing as an evidence, or when it's hiding evidence. So on difficulties with less than 3 evidence, you cannot rule out ghost writing if the ghost throws the book. And you can also get 2 photos from the ghost writing if you're quick. One within a few seconds of the ghost writing interaction, and then a photo of the ghost writing itself. Next, we have the spirit box, and the spirit box can be asked a series of questions either through in-game chat or text-based options, and my go-to questions are: how old are you, where are you, and are you friendly? The rule of thumb for spirit box is turning off the lights, because with the lights on it will not work, and also being alone in the room. I like to walk around the room a few times, making sure I get good coverage of the area, as the spirit box does have a short range. The Moroi has spirit box as one of its evidences and will curse a player who successfully gets a response, which doubles their sanity drain. And there's no real way to indicate if you're cursed unless you look at a sanity monitor over time. The Diogen has a unique interaction where if you're within 1 meter, it will have a 33% chance to do a heavy breathing instead of a normal spirit box response. And the Diogen also has spirit box as a forced evidence, similar to the dots in the Goryo. And next we have the thermometer, which the thermo is pretty straightforward. Go in the ghost room, check temps, and temperatures go down over time in the ghost room, but just make sure the breaker is on. And the Hantu has freezing temperatures as a forced evidence, and it's also a great way to find the ghost room. If the breaker's on, roam between each room and check temps. If there's a room colder than the other areas of the map, then it could be the ghost room. Next, we have the UV, and the UV light will pick up glowing green handprints on doors and windows, fingerprints on light switches, along with a few other things. You can also use salt, and if the ghost walks through it, check the floor for UV footprints as well. The Obake has forced UV evidence, and this is a pretty straightforward equipment. If you see or hear it touch a door, check both sides for handprints, and this is also more of a preference thing, but I do prefer the glow stick more than the tier 3, but both are pretty good. Then our final evidence equipment is going to be the video camera. And using the video camera, you will be able to see ghost orbs if it is a piece of evidence the ghost has. The ghost orbs will always be in the ghost room. Make sure to always place your camera on a tripod, as you can also set it up in the ghost room. You'll be able to see the video from the camera in the truck, and it's a great way to see Goryo dots. And for the mimic, it will always show ghost orbs, despite it technically not being an evidence for it, but the ability for the mimic is that it always has ghost orbs. And the best way to see ghost orbs is turning off the lights and looking around the room for a moment. They aren't hard to see in the dark, so you can rule them out pretty quickly. Next, we have the flashlight, which is nice to see obviously, but it can be a great tool to use to test for the myling. If you drop the flashlight near your hiding spot and listen to the ghost, and if you see electronic interference with the flashlight and you either can't hear or can barely hear the ghost, then it could be a myling. Also, it's a great way to light up parts of the map if you drop it on the floor, just as long as you have an extra one. And with the evidence equipment out of the way, now we're going to go over the optional equipment. So first we have the Crucifix, which will prevent the ghost from hunting within a certain radius. And the tier 1 Crucifix has 1 charge, while the tier 2 and 3 will have 2 charges each. And you can actually take a photo of the Crucifix while it burns for an interaction photo, and you can also get a separate burned Crucifix photo. Not much else to say other than put them down in good spots, cover as much area as possible, and just try and think where the ghost might try to hunt from. Always have the Crucifix cover part of your escape route. Next we have the Firelight, and the tier 3 Firelight is a lantern, and it actually lights up a good amount of area, so it can kind of be used as a light source, but the Firelight is really important for testing for an Onryo. Place a Firelight or multiple Firelights near a Crucifix in the ghost room, and every third Firelight that is blown out will trigger a hunt, and this can also be overridden and prevented if there's another Firelight to prevent that hunt. Next we have the Headgear, and the tier 3 can be good as it gives you night vision, and it also lets you save a slot by not having to pick up a flashlight. And the tier 2 is really not that bad either, especially if you need more equipment and have to drop your flashlight. I don't think it's as bad as people think. And the tier 1 is something. So either pick up the tier 2 or 3 if you want to save a slot and not have to pick up a flashlight, and that's about it. Next we have the Igniter, or the lighter, and it actually has its own slot in the inventory, so you can always pick one up without it affecting how much equipment you can hold. And so just get in the habit of always picking one up at the start of the match. It's better to have and not need than need and not have. You can even use the lighter to light campfires in some of the fireplaces on specific maps, which I think is super cool. Next we have the Incense, or the smudge stick, and this is just kind of a get out of jail free card during a hunt. It's also a great way to prevent the ghost from hunting if you successfully smudge the ghost outside of a hunt. And during a hunt, you'll get a brief time where the ghost will stop chasing you, and you can even run through the ghost if need be. Also, you can use a smudge to test for a spirit and a demon. Just smudge when you have the sanity within hunting range, and if it hunts before 90 seconds, it's a demon, and if it hunts before 180 seconds, it's not a spirit. Next we have a motion sensor, and the motion sensor is actually a great item to track the ghost movement, especially if it seems like the ghost is kind of roaming a lot. I like to use these on smaller maps, putting them in areas where I might try and run and hide during a hunt, just to make sure the ghost hasn't roamed to where I plan on hiding. It's not necessary, but it's a fun thing to play around with and sometimes good to track ghost location. Next, we have the Parabolic Microphone. I really love to use the tier 3 as it shows you where the ghost sound comes from. It will show you if it's above, below, or on the same floor as you, but also show the distance. I'd say using a parabolic is required for bigger maps, and hopefully you have the tier 3 unlocked, just because it makes it way easier to find the ghost room. Something to note about the Parabolic Microphone is that the Banshee has a unique Banshee scream it can do instead of a normal ghost sound, and overall I think it's kind of an underrated item. The tier 1 and 2 can be kind of hard because it doesn't show you where the sound's coming from, but especially the tier 3 I think is really good. Next we have the photo camera, which usually every group will have a cameraman, and it's really just a playstyle that will find the bone and fill up the book with photos. And photos will give you extra money, and also taking 10 3-star photos is a requirement for a perfect game, which will give you a huge bonus of money and XP. The camera can also be good to test for a phantom, as if the ghost does a ghost event and you take a photo, If it is a phantom, it will not appear in the photo, and there will be no electronic interference in the photo. The photos are client side, so whoever took the photo is going to have to be the judge. And I think I just said photo about 20 times in that short amount of time. Next we have salt, which is a great way to test for UV and also get easy photos. If the ghost steps on the salt, it will leave behind UV footprints if one of the evidence pieces for the ghost is UV. Salt is also used to test for a wraith, as the wraith will never step in salt. So place it in doorways to the ghost room, as this will be a surefire way to rule out wraith. Next we have Sanity Medication, which will restore a portion of sanity based on the Sanity Medication restoration setting. Tier 1 will restore amount of sanity over time. Tier 2 is much quicker, and then Tier 3 is quicker and will give you infinite sprint for a brief amount of time. The brief infinite sprint with the Tier 3 sanity is great for bigger maps, as you can go to the truck, grab some equipment, and then get your sanity up while also quickly getting back to the ghost room. And also, if you ever use certain cursed objects, I usually like to take Sanity Medication after. And also, if your team needs more time to figure out the ghost or do an objective, it's also nice to use the medication. It's pretty straightforward, so don't overthink it. Next, we have a sound sensor, and it can be helpful on bigger maps, as you can set them up and they have a big range where you can listen to any sound within that range. The problem is you're restricted to the truck to using it, and so it can be helpful in some niche scenarios, and could be also a great way to listen to the ghost speed during a hunt, given someone is hiding inside the map. But I feel like it's usually a little more trouble than it's worth, as idling in the truck isn't necessarily the best use of your time, unless you're desperate late into the game. And then of course we have the best for last, which is the tripod. I'd say to always place a video camera on a tripod whenever you're bringing one inside, and the tripod will also reduce the chance of a camera being knocked over by a ghost. And you can even use the higher tier tripods to rotate the camera from the truck, which is actually pretty nice, but it's pretty self-explanatory. It's just a tripod for a camera. So I think I've covered everything I think might help some of you understand the equipment better. And I know there's a tutorial that kind of explains the equipment, but some of these tips aren't very intuitive. And I hope you found this video helpful, and thank you guys so much for watching.